Claudette Colvin was a 15-year-old girl who was first arrested in 1955 because she didn't give up her seat on the bus to a white man. Colvin was arrested 9 months before Rosa Parks was, but the timing didn't work out, so she didn't receive much attention from the unjust act committed. In this boycott, African Americans who made up over 50% of the bus riders refused to ride the buses due to the segregation that was being enforced. Martin Luther King Jr. led this boycott. King was a Baptist pastor who became an early civil rights activist. Virtually unknown at the time, King became very prominent after leading this boycott. He practiced nonviolent civil disobedience, and through this, violence as done by the whites was seen as being very bad, leading to racial change. To avoid the buses, African Americans used other modes of transportation. Primarily, African Americans walked. Indeed, the NAACP provided African Americans with a carpool service in order to help them travel to longer distance places. In any situation, the biggest motivation to most people is money. Thus, that is why the boycott worked so effectively. Montgomery was taking massive financial hits from the bus system alone. But Montgomery also suffered because a lot of companies would not do business in Montgomery due to all of the racial problems. For example, the violence as done by whites towards the boycott greatly discouraged any business deal from happening, as no company wants to openly support a violent and racist town, who is recorded at its absolute worst. Further, the boycott was over, but the fight for justice was not. King then moved on to pursue other areas in life that were segregated, like education. The boycott also impacted other areas of life by giving the African Americans a voice, and through this voice, African Americans were signing up to vote, which greatly swayed politics. Also, African Americans began applying for more jobs, boosting employment, which ultimately boosted the economy. And these impacts prove that the bus boycott spread to affect other places outside of the transportation system. As stated earlier, King gaining popularity was one of the main impacts of the bus boycott. Specifically, using this new power, King led marches across the nation, most notably the marches that occurred in Selma in Washington, D.C. Likewise, the march in Selma turned very violent very quickly, and this violence was recorded and published by the media. Once seeing the horrible things being done, the general population started questioning their racist actions and beliefs. And due to this questioning, African Americans started gaining more aid, which eventually led to the complete desegregation of mostly everything. I volunteered at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute here in downtown. The Institute is a public, nonprofit organization that promotes learning. According to Tracy Jones, the Institute's manager, their goal is to help all individuals learn about the civil rights movement. And from learning this, we can make sure that we do not repeat history, but it also helps promote unification in the future through a safe learning environment. Now to what I did when I volunteered. By volunteering, I shadowed Miss Jones as she was giving tours of the facility. And during these tours, she asked me general questions of the civil rights movement. Being able to answer all of these questions correctly, she and I discussed further questions concerning the boycott after the tour. When not giving tours, I stood at the entrance greeting and welcoming guests as they walked in. Miss Jones and I also walked through the whole museum numerous times, picking up trash and straightening up displays that had been moved. Indeed, I had a good experience at the Institute as it really helped further my learning for all of the civil rights, but specifically on the bus boycott.